Sorry, I'm just finding the share screen button now. It's disappeared.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Ro? Hello, just checking in with everybody.
Oh, hi there. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. What do I do next? Just listen for somebody else?
Perfect. Yeah, if we could just keep our mics on mute for now, and there'll be certain sorry, I can't speak. There'll be certain times when we can do a Q&A and we'll let you know. So if you want to have any questions, then feel free to unmute.
Okay, just checking.
No problem. Perfect. So thanks everyone for coming. This webinar is about being a Team Wilder champion. I'm going to chat to you about what Team Wilder is, some examples of Team Wilder champions we've got at the moment, and some of the great things they've been doing. Then we'll hear from Philip about his Hartington Wildflower Project. We'll have a bit of a time then for a Q&A, and then a bit of a discussion about your projects. If you're doing anything, there'll be a chance for you to feed back to us. Let us know what you're doing, what support you might need. So what is Team Wilder? Team Wilder is an ethos. It's a way of working. It's about us facilitating and empowering people to do their own wildlife projects to help put nature into recovery. So it's not just about engagement, it's about organising our community and finding those champions, those people who can really help us drive that forward, who'll talk to people, whether that's in their street or their village or within their group, and start some exciting projects. So we have a goal, or the Wildlife Trust have a goal, to manage 30% of land for nature and wildlife by 2030. To do this, we need 1 in 4 people to be taking action for wildlife. So in Derbyshire, that's 250,000 people, which is a lot of people for us to talk to, which is why we need champions like you who can go out and help us. Could chat to you a little bit about some of our projects and what we've been doing and the people we've been working with. So Next Door Nature, that is a funded Team Wilder project. It's empowering people to take action for nature where they live and work. It's in Arboretum, Normanton and Alveston areas around Derby City. And it's about inspiring community action. And we're hoping that as we get more groups taking action, they'll connect with each other and that'll have a ripple effect. If it works, I've got a short video here we can play about the Next Door Nature project.
You'll have to stop sharing, I think, and share a new screen, Jordan.
Oh. Sorry, give me a second.
The meadows.
Right. Can everyone see that? Yeah, perfect.
It is an area of Nottingham City. The project was started by local people.
I've always wanted to do something green. I know nothing about gardening or horticulture, so it was just a great opportunity for me to bring the family, and we experience a little bit of green space, an oasis, if you like, of all these different smells and colors. It's something subliminal. Your body, your mind knows that this is a safe space, that you can rest here, that you can breathe easy.
Green within the city needs to be there. If you live in a flat, there's nowhere green for you to be. You need somewhere like this to come. People need to interact with nature. They need to be involved in it, and they need to be taking their own actions with it.
That just gives you a little insight into some of the things that are happening in the Next Door Nature project. That was actually in Nottingham, but we're doing very similar work here in Derbyshire. Can you see this presentation again now? Super. So Wild Peak, again, this is something else we're working on to help create landscape scale nature recovery. It's about connecting people and wildlife across that area. So it's kind of a rewilding network. We've got people who are pledging land, people that are pledging time, people that are pledging kind of money and financial resources to help the Wild Peak. Here you can see the map of the area. And we want to, it's really a community focused rewilding project. It's about those community groups doing things, about the landowners doing things and relinking habitats together, making space for species reintroductions, engaging the wider community with the wider landscape, and igniting Derbyshire's nature-based economy. Derwent Connections is another example of mobilising large numbers of individuals, communities and organisations to act towards a common goal. So we sent a survey out to everybody in the Derwent Connection kind of catchment area to find out about flooding and what they could do. So we have groups doing tree planting now. We have a school creating an orchard. There's some people that have been doing training about building leaky dams and woodland creation. So there's lots of different things for community groups to do, and also individuals. We have a 15 ways to reduce flooding toolkit, which we send out to people as a download, and they can do things in their garden as well. And then urban rewilding. So we are doing a lot in urban areas as well. The vision is for wilder towns and cities to be abundant with wildlife where nature and people are thriving together. People and wildlife share towns and cities, and spaces within surrounding our urban areas are spared for nature to let it flourish. So this will help not only with the climate crisis and nature's recovery and wildlife in these areas, but it'll also be great for people's health and well-being. Wilder Derby is an example of that, and you can see with some images of what it could look like if we leave it, let it rewild. And again here, gives people ideas and a vision and inspiration of the things that we can achieve if we all work together. So as well as some of these projects that we also have some Team Wilder actions. It's not to say these are the only actions people can take, but they give you ideas and things that you can do as an individual. You can do it as a street. You could do it with your friends and family. You could do it with your schools, your Scouts group, your Brownies groups, lots of different things that people can do. And it's just one simple action. You don't have to do them all. There's lots of different things. So we have Go Potty for Wildlife, which is about planting for pollinators. It's about recycling pots, making them out of things that you might have otherwise thrown away, whether that's your welly boots or an old teapot. Grow Don't Mow, which you can do in your own garden. You can do it in a community space. It could be that you write to your MP and ask them to leave the verges to grow in your village. There's lots of different versions of that. And then we've got Pond in a Pot, which is about having ponds in lots of spaces. It doesn't have to be a big space. You don't have to dig a big hole. You can make a pond just in a washing up bowl. Shining the Right Light, which is about having the right lighting in your outdoor spaces. Bringing birds back, so focusing on bird boxes, having the right types of bird boxes in the right places. And then our newest action, which is about curbing your carbon to save the planet and your pocket. So there's lots of different pledges people can take in there. We've got information, different ways you can save, curb carbon. So whether that's turning off your lights, whether it's doing something to save water, whether it's changing how you travel or what you eat, there's lots of different ways that you can do that and get involved. And they are all on our web pages. We've got a Team Wilder area there, and you can find out more about those actions. So Wildlife Champions, hopefully that's all of you here who've come today. You're going to find out what we're up to, get inspired by Philip and go and do your own exciting projects. So I'm just going to chat you through some examples of people that are doing this in the Derbyshire area. On the left 3 pictures, this is one of our champions, Chris and Sheila, and they've created a butterfly haven. They're based in Darley-Dale, and they started a few years ago now, had a pristine garden before, and then decided that they wanted to reintroduce certain types of butterfly, not just in their garden, but in Derbyshire. So quite a big ambition, but they started small. Chris started leaving his grass to grow, researching what grasses he would need for butterflies in his garden. So I think he has about 22 different types of grasses now growing in his garden, which is quite amazing. But he soon realised he couldn't do this alone. Butterflies need lots of space, and just his garden, as lovely as it is, wasn't going to do that. So he had some open days for his neighbours and his local community, and he invited people along to come and see his garden to try and inspire them to do something. He created some fantastic sheets about different plants people could have. You know, they didn't have to go the whole hog and have 22 grasses, but if they could have 1 or 2 of these plants, it would really help create these nature corridors and links for butterflies. I think he had 2 of those and were really successful, and he's been to advise around 4 or 5 of his neighbours and local community who wanted to do something similar to him as well in their garden. So he's been out to talk to them. He's since joined the parish council, and now he's working to do a much bigger project across Darley-Dale and identify areas of land where they can make use for butterflies and what they can do. So that's a great project, which has started with 1 person, but he's really got the community and the local council behind him. Then on the right here, these are some pictures from Belper. So we have Tony and his fantastic street. During lockdown, they all got together and decided they want to do things as a community and as a street and help each other. And one of their goals was to do things for wildlife. So they all took part in Grow Don't Mow last year and left their grass to grow. They all put signs up to let people know why they were growing their grass and helping the bees. And now they're doing some fantastic things like recycling. So they've all chipped together to get kind of soft plastic recycling and a coffee pod recycling bin on their street. And they've also worked with a local business owner. So at the end of their road, there is a factory there, and they had a disused car park, which was all rubbled over. So they've been to talk to him to say, you know, you're not using this. How can we make it better for nature and wildlife? So we've helped them, supported them on the way to what to do. They've let a lot of it grow over. And now they're opening it up to the local school children. So they're getting the school children, the community is involved as well. And their aims are to get a sculpture trail around there for the children to do and really help them connect to nature as well. So it's not just hands-on action for wildlife that our champions can do. It could be that you want to campaign for something. So the lady on the BBC News is Rhiannon, and she's been campaigning against the East Midlands Freeport that'll be around the Etwall area. She's worked really hard to get about 600 people in her Facebook group. She's been leafleting, she started a petition, she's been on the news, she's been writing to MPs, and working really hard to get a campaign off the ground for that, highlighting the issues it might cause for both the people in that area and the wildlife. Down on the left, we have some of the Derby Climate Action Group who were protesting last year at COP26. And then on the right, you have another group who are from Matlock, who have been campaigning now for 10 years to stop a development in their area. And we've supported them with things like campaign training, connecting them with our advocacy team and manager who can talk to them, advise them, helping them with how to write to your MP, how to approach your parish council, different things like that. Another area of this champion work that people could do is community fundraising, whether that's fundraising to save some land. So on the left is the Crouch Chase group, and the woods went up for sale there and they wanted to save it. So they were community fundraising, we were supporting them there. We were just saying, we think it was about £250,000 they had to raise. So they again worked really hard. They had a group of them there together and we were helping support them do that. Then on the right, we have a fantastic group that cycled from Land's End to John's Groats. So they raised £11,000 for 2 charities. So that was for us and someone else, and split the money. So they did a really great job there. And then we have the wonderful Jake down here as well, a little 5-year-old boy who did loads of actions for wildlife during 30 Days Wild over the summer. Sorry. And he raised £1,000 for wildlife through sponsorship. And we do have a community fundraising pack now as well to support people to do these kind of actions. So champions are key for us to be able to help wildlife and really have an impact in different areas. So I'm going to pass over to Philip now, who can talk about his Hartington Wildflower Project and what they've been doing.
Right, thank you, Jordan. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. I'm going to share my screen now, so bear with me 1 second. Okay. Right. Can you all see that?
Yes, yeah.
Excellent. I love it when technology works. Very good. Well, first of all, thank you to Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, Danielle, Jordan, for inviting me to come along tonight, and it's lovely to meet all of you, albeit virtually, on the call. If you do have questions, as Jordan said, I'd be delighted to try and answer them, because I'm sure I won't cover everything in the time I've got available. Yeah, it's lovely to be here with you tonight. So what I want to do really was just spend a few minutes talking about the background to our project in Hartington, and then I'll talk a bit about what we're trying to achieve as a group, and then share with you some of the details about the project itself, and some of the things we've been working on as a community over the last couple of years. Talk a bit about what's next, because as I'm sure all of you, and it'd be really interesting to hear from you as your experiences. We're on a journey, definitely. We don't have all the answers. We've learned lots, and some things have worked really well, some things haven't. So we try and learn from that and take it forward into next year. And thinking about the group that's here tonight as well, I thought it'd be quite useful to share with you some of the things we've learned as a community project going through this last couple of years, because we have learnt lots. First of all, who am I? Well, I'm Philip. I live in Hartington. I'm originally from Leicestershire, just over the border, so I sort of count myself as an East Midlander. I'm somebody that's got a really keen passion and interest in helping protect nature, the environment all around us. And from my own personal experience, my own background, having spent most of my career sitting in an office, I'm an IT guy by background, getting out into nature was a tremendous fillip for me and a big support for me, particularly during stressful times. So you'll see later that's one of our big drivers. So this is something I'm really close to, and it's really important to me to support. So that's who I am. I don't know if anybody knows Hartington. There's an open offer to any of you, and Danielle mentioned it as well, but if you'd like to come and see what we're doing at first hand, you're more than welcome, because it's really good to be able to share and collaborate ideas. That photo was taken on quite a sunny day, as Danielle mentioned. When she came over, it was absolutely tipping down when she came over to see us a month or so ago. But it's a lovely village. We are in the White Peak area, just close to the River Dove. And we're sort of in between the Buxton, Matlock, Bakewell, Ashbourne, so sort of equidistant to all of them, really. It's not a very big village, and the reason I want to share this with you, because when you see some of the things we're doing, one of the big challenges is how you get the community engaged in this. So we've got about 150 houses, less than 300 people live here. Of those houses, we reckon about a third are second homes or holiday homes. So there's a few, but it's not completely changed the balance of the village. And we're also fortunate because we are a village that supports the local community. We've got a lovely church, St Giles A, you can see it on the picture, a village hall, 3 shops, a Legion club. You can see, you know, the pubs, a couple of pubs, cafes, and one of the country's largest youth hostels, as well as a school, surgery, and catering for the tourists. We get lots of sort of B&Bs and cottages. If you've been here, you'll know it's a very popular tourist destination. So it gets, particularly in the summer, gets really busy, and that's one of the things we try to think about with our project as we go through it. So that's a bit about where we are and who the village is. I thought I'd just spend a few minutes, and I suspect this is, I'm sure this is something that will resonate with all of you on the call tonight. So why did we start this project? And I'll take you through a bit more background in a second to how it started. So we've got a couple of areas of focus really. One is, of course, our environment. We all know, I'm sure, that the environment's got some big challenges, and something that resonates a lot to me living in Hartington. And in fact, we were just talking about my screen's background on the call before you guys joined. That's a lovely view of the Dove Valley, but it's from an ecological point of view, it's very degraded. So it looks pretty, but from a biodiversity point of view, very poor. We've lost most of our meadows in the last 100 years. Consequently, big drop in birds. You know, if I talk to the local residents here, who were born in the village, curlews in particular, were very common when they were growing up. You hardly see them now, and that's consequential in terms of the impact on the loss of habitats such as meadows. So there's an environmental aspect to it, but also really importantly, and this is where my own personal experience comes in, that we as individuals need nature, and our community as well. And we saw this particularly over the last couple of years with COVID, and again, being in a rural community that's can be quite isolated, we did see that the impact of COVID had an impact on individuals and their ability to meet up and talk to each other. So we were looking for a way that we could start to balance that. And of course, being outdoors, is great for one's physical and mental well-being. Getting close to nature is really important. So they were some of our drivers. And then that led to where we are now, which is this slide, which is, so how did we start this project? And again, I hope this resonates with some of the work that all of you are doing in your areas. So the idea, which is really good, came out of the school. And why is that important? Well, that's our next generation starting to recognise that we as a community should be doing something more to protect the environment. It is a very rural area. It's very agricultural, strong farming community. And so it's great to see our next generation starting to challenge the rest of the community to think differently. So we got together a group of people and this was the middle of COVID, interestingly, so we could talk at distance, like 15 feet away from each other, and said, we knew a few people would be interested from across the community in doing something around the sort of biodiversity and environmental side. So we got together. It was a Zoom call like this early in 2020, and we said, right, let's sort of think about what we might do here. So we had nothing before this, no framework to follow, no template, no people engaged in it, so nothing was happening across the community. But we agreed a couple of principles, and there was 7 of us on the call. I remember it really well. And we said, well, the first thing is that we're going to focus on wildflowers and native and local wherever possible. And of course, I don't want to forget fungi, lichen, trees, all that is what we look at. And the reason we want to focus on wildflowers is that you get that right, and then the rest of nature follows. That makes sense. So, if you've got wildflowers, you'll attract pollinators, that'll attract birds, and you see the whole ecosystem start to repair itself. We wanted to do a couple of things really. One was, let's make sure we provide the right conditions to both encourage what's already there, or if areas do need help, we can help it by planting and seeding appropriate plants. So there's a couple of different approaches there. And we chose 5 areas across the village, and I'll show you some of these later to give you an idea of what we did. But what's really important in a project like this, that they need to be accessible to everybody in the community. So there's no point having something that's sort of locked away that nobody can see. A big part of this, and one of our big drivers, was how do we get people engaged in it? And then linked to that is that every area has volunteers looking after it. In fact, one of the things that we're limited by, we've got loads of opportunities to take on more areas that I'll take you through later, but I need volunteers to do that. And because again, that's another way of getting people engaged. And we work very closely with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust as well, of course, but we've also formed very close links into Derbyshire Dales District Council. I don't know if all of you on the call today, that's your local council, but we found that it's really important to get to know what their priorities are, and share with them what we're doing, because you'll see later that those priorities, things like district councils, peak parks, a lot of those are mutually beneficial. And also the parish council, that was such an important stakeholder for us, not without challenge, which I can talk about, but it's really important to get them engaged. So that's a bit about how we started and how we came together. And we came up with a sort of framework for what we're working to achieve, which basically is that we want to provide spaces across the community that support wildflowers and wildlife, but really importantly developed and maintained by the community. And that's so key to what we've learned and what we're doing. We could just do this with a couple of people, but that doesn't really tick the boxes from our perspective, because whatever we're doing, it's got to be sustainable, and it can't rely on 1 or 2 people to keep it going. You may have seen it, I've certainly seen it, where you get really good ideas at start, but sort of fade away after a couple of years because you haven't got people to keep them going. So one of the things I'm trying to do is work really hard to build that sustainability. So the sort of 3 principles that are equally important is, yes, we want to make sure we address the challenges of sustainability and care for our natural world. That's obviously a massive driver. But then also we want to make sure that we give people a chance to look after themselves by getting involved, getting outdoors and doing stuff. And then that links to the 3rd one, which is how do we get the community more engaged in what we're doing? So all 3 of those, in my experience, need to work together if you're going to have a successful and sustainable group. And by the way, I should have said, if you want these slides, no problem at all, we can get them to you if you're interested in them. I don't know, you might not know Hartington, not really important, but you get an idea hopefully from this map of the layout of the village. What's really good, now we've got 9 areas as of today, and I'm hoping we'll have another 2 early in 2023, and that's not bad for a community of say less than 300 people. But what you start to see, and I think Jordan covered it a bit around wildlife corridors that are so important now for nature, that what we're trying to do is make sure that as we develop these areas, they're all linking up across the village, so we can encourage the flow of pollinators and the like across the village, and that seems to be going really well. And you'll see some examples later of where that's been historically quite a challenge, because in the middle of the village, lots of tarmac with the roads and things, it's been very difficult historically to deal with that. So that's where we are now. So we've got 9 areas. Hopefully that gives you an idea of what they are. And I thought I'd share with you some examples of what those different plots look like. And hopefully you'll find this quite interesting, because again, they're all different and they've all got different challenges. And again, this may resonate with some of your areas as well. And again, it'd be really interesting to get your feedback on what you're seeing. But I'll talk about this first one, which is the church. And this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One is it's what's called a closed churchyard, so burials don't take place there anymore, and therefore the district council manage it, they mow it, and historically they've mowed it really well, i.e. Close to the ground, nothing grows, and it's been a bit of an ecological desert. But working really closely with the church and the church committee, we persuaded them to say, actually, let's dedicate a bit of space to wildflowers. And they were great, to be honest, and you'll see later that they are a key partner from the work we're doing, and that's so important. So you can see on the left-hand side, very typical space in the village, lots of grass, closely mown. So we got the council ecology lead to come in, we got his support, he gave us some really good advice. And for this particular plot, we decided that the best approach would be to scarify it. Because the grass was so thick and matted. You can see a photo in the middle there that we did that in March. Did a low cut first of all, then scarified, and then we marked it out, and then we seeded and planted with a variety of seeds. And what you can see on the right hand side there, just some examples from that was from the very first year, which was incredible. So we've got the harebell on top right, which we seeded, oxeye daisies coming out, yellow loosestrife, which was already there, which is really interesting. And we got lots of positive feedback. So this year it made the area a bit bigger. And again, I'll share with you what our plans are for next year in a short while. And that's, again, I don't know if any of you have got churches within your area, but I can talk more about some of the challenges there around things, some of the concerns about, do the graves look messy if they're not tended properly, etc. And we've tried to manage all of that. So that's one example of a particular area that we're now managing. That's one of our 9, and the church has been really, really successful in supporting us. This is another one that, again, I picked this one out because it's a field owned by actually an ex-farmer, which is interesting, who historically used to mow it, close mow it every year. And you can see on the left-hand side that it's probably about half an acre, the field. And that's what it used to look like, absolutely devoid of anything but grass. And you can see on the picture in the middle, we've got some houses at the back there that a lot of young families live there. So we had a chat with the farmer and said, look, are you willing to give us a bit of your field to experiment and try out planting some wildflowers? And bless him, he said, absolutely, I'm all for it. And that's him actually in the foreground on that second picture on the left-hand side there. So again, what we decided to do there was a slightly different approach, dug the ground over, and then again, what's critical in our project, and I think again hopefully something that resonates with all of you, is this community engagement thing. How do we get people engaged, particularly the younger generation? So from the community on the left hand side there, living in those houses, young families, we got them all involved in seeding, planting and ongoing maintenance of the plot, which has been so amazing. And they really are sort of flag bearers now in many ways for the work we're doing. And so again, that's something that's been a big lesson for us, is getting the next generation engaged and supporting. And again, it's gone really well, that area. So that's another example of what we're doing. And this is the one that Danielle came to see us about a few and when it was so wet recently. And this is a really interesting one actually, because we're partnering with the Youth Hostel Association, and they've got a lovely youth hostel in Hartington. If you've not been there, it's one of the best that they've got. And they've got this lovely area that looks over the village, that in the mid-90s a pond was installed, but for years it hadn't been managed. And as you can see on the left-hand side there, excuse me, it'd been completely overgrown, yellow iris, completely took over the pond. It became a bit of a dumping ground, lots of holes in the lining, so very challenging area. And then at the back of the orchard, the pond area, about a quarter of an acre completely covered in ground ivy, so nothing else is growing. So with the support of the youth hostel, we brought this into our project scope, and this has been a really good example again of community engagement. So we've run a couple of volunteer days, and again, that's a really good way to get folks involved from across the community. And I'll talk about how we're advertising that in a bit. We just said to people, come along, don't need any experience, have a bit of fun, get your hands dirty and feel good about it. And they've been really successful. And working with the youth hostel, we've also got people in from further afield as well. So places like North Yorkshire, Birmingham, Carlisle, all coming down to help us and sort of raising the profile of what we're doing, which has been fantastic. So volunteer days are a really good way to get people engaged in our experience. And then you can see on the right hand side, this is literally getting the pond ready for the next phase, which is relining. The good news is that's now been done. We did it last Monday. I was really concerned that the pond wouldn't fill up over winter because of the rain, but actually in the last week it's almost full. So my challenge now is what happens if the pond gets too full, because we've had a lot of rain, as you probably know. But that would be a fantastic area in the spring and summer next year. And the plan is, you can probably see on the right hand side there that there's a little sort of platform. So that's been restored as well. Now we're going to offer the local school, but also visitors to the youth hostel, the chance to come along and do some pond dipping. So again, another good way to get the community engaged. Okay, and the final one I want to share with you, again, slightly different example, but hopefully it makes you think about your own areas and think about what does a wildflower plot look like, because they can be different. And the reason I picked this one is that if you know Hartington, and it's typical of quite a few villages, in the centre of the village you've got a road going through it, you've got a roundabout, a bus stop, and it's concrete and tarmac, and historically not much there to really support nature. In fact, there were some old planters, you can see on the left hand side there. They're looking a bit sorry for themselves. They did have plants in them. They weren't particularly good for pollinators. They were annuals. So we decided, with the parish council's help, and they've been fantastic, they helped fund the purchase of new wood. We got volunteers in the village to build new environmentally friendly planters. We put compost in, again, environmentally friendly compost, and we planted a whole range of pollinator friendly plants, including the one next to the bus stop. Again, if you're in the village, or you know the village, you might have seen it. But we've got a little herb group of planters as well, and we've encouraged visitors and residents alike to help themselves to herbs if they want them. So just another little sort of angle to how we're trying to get people engaged. And the other thing we've done there as well is that we've set up a watering rota during the summer. And again, another way to get, maybe people who haven't got time to get that involved if they're busy with their jobs and family. But we've got 20 people now throughout the summer that come out every day and water them for us. So again, another example of how we get people engaged. And they've gone really well. We've got lots of positive feedback from visitors and the community alike, and we want to carry on that work. The other thing I wanted just to highlight quickly was letting people know what you're doing is really important. So you can see on that picture in the middle at the bottom that we put posters up when we were putting the new plants in, just to let know people what we're doing. Because sometimes you get questions, it looks a bit messy, there's nothing there, what you're doing. So again, think about messaging when you're doing this sort of thing. And I just want to share with you two examples of how we've tried to get the community more engaged as well. And outside of, I guess, the traditional group of people that you might think would want to be involved in volunteering to do wildflower work. This is one we did. So we asked a group of our residents to help us create some artwork for each of our wildflower areas across the village. And this is what you can see they've done. And I think is absolutely stunning what they've done, and just shows the talents that you've got in communities. And this forms part of something that I'll talk a bit about later, which is we're going to create a wildlife trail next year, where we want visitors and residents to sort of be able to walk around the different areas and see what we're doing in each one. But this has been a really good way to get a group of the community engaged in helping the project that might not normally have thought about sort of doing something like this. And the other one, which has been so fantastic, is the school. If you've got schools in your community area that you're working on, I would absolutely encourage you, if you haven't done so already, to try and get the school engaged in some way. And we're so fortunate that we've got a fantastic team of teachers and a head teacher and a terrific group of children there that are really supportive of what we're trying to do. So we asked them last year to come up with a logo for our project, which they did, and I just think it's amazing. So we use that now in a lot of our comms, and in fact, I don't know whether you can see it, but we do things like now we give out little, that's my sort of coaster, which has got our logo on it. So we give those out as well to people, just to sort of spread the word about what we're doing, which is really cool, I think. But again, another way to get the different group and community engaged. So hopefully it's just some food for thought really about ideas to share and get people involved. And the good news is, because I've talked a lot about what we're doing, but we've seen a significant increase in the number of wildflowers we're getting across the village now. We do count throughout the summer and spring in particular. Each area on average is seeing between 15 and 20 wildflowers that we wouldn't have seen there before. And I'm sure there's more, to be honest, that we haven't counted yet. But I've been really pleased with that. So we are seeing the benefits, which is good. Okay, and just a bit about what next before I talk about lessons learned. So the big thing is that this is a journey, so we're not finished, and you'll see in a minute when I talk about lessons learned that we've taken things deliberately in sort of chunks. We're not trying to do everything all at once, because you've got to try and get people on that journey with you, and I think sometimes, especially in a small community, if you go in and say, right, we'll do all of this all at once, people go, oh no, that's too much. So the sort of gradual approaches work really well for us. So we've got a couple of things that we're looking at next year. One is we'll carry on developing our areas and expanding them. So, for example, in the churchyard, we're hopefully going to get the approval next week from the church to move to a complete no-mow policy across the whole churchyard. I mean, churchyards are an amazing space for wildlife. It's just incredible what will flourish there if you let it. So I'm confident we'll get that through next week. New areas, we've got plenty of opportunities, and say the challenge really for me is I won't take on a new area unless I get people that are willing to look after it. So we're trying to engage new volunteers as well. The village pond's a good example that we're working with the parish council now on. It's been I'd say it's been a sort of traditional village pond in some ways, that it's been closely mown around the edges, hardly any biodiversity in the pond itself, apart from a massive profusion of yellow iris, which we're going to help clear out in the near future. So that's another example of what we're looking at. Orchards, so I'd be interested if anybody else is doing orchards. So again, talking to Danielle and Jordan certainly about what other communities are doing with orchards, and that's something we're quite excited about, because we're probably going to go something like a distributed orchard where we've got 5 or 6 orchards across the village that people are willing to get involved in. Encouraging our residents to do more. This is definitely a journey we're on, and so we're not just trying to sort of do community areas, but also helping people do more in their own areas. And maybe it's because they live in a place like Hartington, but we've been really lucky that people do get it generally, and they've been willing to dedicate a bit of space to wildflowers. And in fact, this morning I was talking to a couple that want to create a wildflower plot on the verge outside their house, and they wanted some help on. So that's a big area of opportunity for us. And I mentioned earlier a wildflower trail, so just making it more visible to what we are doing, and particularly because we get so many visitors, is with families, is how can we get kids, for example, to get more involved and do a bit of a I Spy trail across the village as we do something like that, which we're quite excited about. Okay, and I'll just finish, if I may, if I've got enough time, Jordan. Thank you. Again, thinking about the Team Wilder event, is that I think it's really useful to be able to share what we've learned, and we don't have all the answers, I can guarantee that, and I'm really keen to hear from others. Hence why, I'll be delighted to host anybody in Hartington at any time, and we can have a chat about what you're doing as well. So what we learned, well, having a small group of volunteers is really important that have got commitment and passion to get involved. Doesn't have to be a big group, but having people that have got a bit of time really helps. I'm the project lead. I am able to dedicate time to this. I'm passionate about it, and I've got a group of volunteers equally are very passionate, and that's so key to what we're doing. The areas themselves can be accessible and need to be accessible and visible. So, especially in the early days when you're trying to get the community on board, is like the church, for example. That's a classic example. We've got a car park area. We've got a plot opposite a doctor's surgery. Make sure people can see them so they can see what's happening. It doesn't matter how big they are. They can be really small. I love one of the things Jordan talked about was a little pond in a bucket type thing. That can be so small, it will attract nature, and same for our wildlife patches. I can't stress enough the importance from our experience of trying to get different members of the community engaged. We've worked really hard on that, and these groups have been fantastic in supporting us. So if you've got a school, try and get the school engaged, get them to build activities into their curriculum. One of our plots is at the school, as you may have seen earlier, the church, businesses such as youth hostels. Who else do you have in your community? Other local community groups. We've got other groups in the village that we work with pretty closely to share activities and experiences. You saw I mentioned earlier about volunteer days, encouraging wildflowers at home, and doing things like seed swaps and plant swaps. We've done that as well. Just again, different ways of engaging with different groups in the community is really important. Also, letting people know what you're doing, and again, we try and cater to all different audiences. So not everybody's online. So don't just rely on Facebook and social media. So we also put updates into our local community newsletter, for example, which is widely read across the community. We've got notice boards across the village we use, but we also do use Facebook. We've got a very active Facebook group that we do post on a regular basis too. And as I said to you earlier, sort of if you can let people know around the areas themselves what you're doing, that's really helpful, because otherwise people just assume the worst, in my experience, particularly in the early days. So again, communication is really important. The next one is about being realistic on scope and objectives, especially in year one. Some of the areas, to be honest, after the first year didn't really do much, and some of our volunteers said, "Oh, that's not worked really well, has it?" And actually year two was a lot different. So sometimes it takes a while for whatever you're doing to show through. And so that's something that, I was very keen to emphasize with our volunteers. But also be realistic in terms of the fact that you are relying on volunteers. Everyone's got families, work commitments, so don't try and take on too much as well. And so getting that balance right is really important. Otherwise, if you do try and do too much with people, I think you might lose them, in my experience. So just something to bear in mind as well. It does take time, there's no doubt about that. Relationships really important as well. So I've worked really hard to build strong links into Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, of course, which is so important. The National Park Authority as well, and local and district councils. And what I've noticed as well, and of course it goes without saying for Derbyshire Wildlife Trust and arguably Peak Parks, but the local and district councils now, climate change and biodiversity loss are high on their agenda. So they're looking for ways they can work with community groups such as ours to work together for mutual benefit. So, for example, things like not mowing verges. One of our areas is a car park that Derbyshire Dales look after. Again, they don't mow that now, and they're really happy and supportive to do that. So engaging with others has been really helpful. and letting people know what you're doing. Parish council has been a big part of that for me. We've got a range of parish councillors, some farmers, some residents, some business owners, and as you might expect, quite a variety of views about what is acceptable in a place like Hartington. So, keeping them up to date on what we're doing and sharing with them and getting their feedback. And that's why I said it's really important to know what their concerns are. Because if you just try and sort of ignore that in a place like Hartington, it just won't work. The whole thing really works on relationships. Share what you're doing with others. So again, it'd be great to hear from others, and I'll be delighted to hear more from what you guys are doing as well. But we've learned a lot from other groups that we've been talking to. Some groups are further ahead than us, some are just starting. So, we've tried to get good links into local groups. And what's really encouraging, there's lots out there that are doing work, and it's really inspiring to see that, actually. Number 8 is, again, one thing we've learned through experimentation sometimes is that each area is different and one size doesn't fit all. So you might have to change your approach to different areas depending what you learn as you go through. As you saw from those slides I showed earlier, one area was scarified, one area we dug over. Others, the car park I mentioned, we just left it alone because the ecologist that we got in from Derbyshire Dale said, "You probably got a really good seed back there," and he was right. That naturally came up. Keep records of what you're seeing. So regular counts of wildflowers. It's good to be able to see as you go through the year what's coming up, because they will change. And what surprised me was that even between one year and the next, in the same period of time, like during the summer, I saw different wildflowers appear, which was really good to see. But keep a track of what you're doing. Money always helps. My 10th point. We don't need a lot, but we've identified and worked with a couple of groups: Parish Council, Peak Parks, Derbyshire Dale, CVS. We've got money from those organisations to help us fund seeds and tools and notice boards, etc. And there's plenty of grants out there as well if you look for them, if you know where to look. And I know from what Jordan was saying earlier that Derbyshire Wildlife Trust can help as well. And the last point is just enjoy it, because it's great fun being outdoors. It brings so much benefits to the individuals and communities. Whenever we do a volunteer day, we have so much fun. It's great to see so many people engage from different parts of the community, and it gives them a real feeling of well-being when they know that they're giving back to nature as well. So that is probably the most important point, I would say. And with that, I'm going to finish with any questions anybody's got any. So thanks everyone. I hope that's been a sort of useful session, and if I've missed anything or skirted over everything, then I'll gladly take any questions now if I've got time, Jordan, or if not, I'm sure I can. Well, I think you saw my email. I'll give you my email again at the end, actually, and you're very welcome to contact me.
Yeah, we've got time for a few questions. Thank you, Philip. That was really interesting, exciting to see what you've been up to. Do you want to maybe stop sharing screen and we can see anyone?
Yeah.
If anyone wants to ask anything, stick your
Okay.
hand up or pop it in the chat. We do have one in the chat. Just saying thank you very much, and
thank you, Anna. Thank you very much, Anna. Appreciate your feedback there.
I've got a question, Philip. I've just listened to that. It's just really fantastically inspiring, and because you've come quite far in your journey already in quite a short space of time, and it's great to hear that you've got volunteers. And I guess for anybody that's just starting out, that could seem like a bit of a mountain to climb in terms of, it's just all small steps, and it all comes together. But if somebody here is just starting out and they wanted to do one thing, and it was just them, they've got nobody else at the moment, how would you suggest they started their own journey in their community? What would be the one thing you would recommend that they do?
That's a good question.
Or where
I
did you start? How did
well,
you, what was your
I
first
talk
thing?
actually talking to people, and I remember still the sort of first time I had a conversation with a friend of mine in the village, and we were just talking about what the school had done, and we said, "Oh, it'd be really good to do something." And the two of us said, "Well, why don't we?" So sometimes it can start with a conversation, and what struck me was that you might not think that anybody shares the same views as you, and sometimes you're a bit nervous to talk about it because people might go, "Oh, that's silly," or "You can't do that. You know, you'll never change people." And what I found was just by having that conversation, and the lady I spoke to, Janet, said, "Oh, I know somebody else that might be interested," and it was amazing how it sort of then almost mushroomed, cascaded from there, where we suddenly ended up with that initial group of people. And I guess it depends how how known you are in the community, Danielle, is whether you feel confident in doing that or not. The other thing that I did was early on is we put a little note in our community newsletter saying this is what we're doing. We're still working it out. If anybody's interested, just give me a shout. So no pressure, no commitment, just are you interested in this? So it was that sort of low key, let's have a chat, no pressure. That's probably the thing that for me was that first step. But also just talking about what you're doing personally as well was a really good way to get in that. And I said to you at the start that to me being outdoors is really important for my well-being, and just talking to people about their experiences as well, that helped, I think, get some more connections where people maybe thought, well, this is not just about what we can do for nature, it's going to help me as well and my community. So yeah, just those initial conversations. And again, if you've got contacts with a school or a church that you can talk to, again, just for that initial chat, and just see where the conversation goes, because as I said at the start, when we first sat down at the beginning of 2020, we didn't have a clue what we were going to do. So we just sort of worked it through as we went along, really, as a group.
So
you
my
don't have to have
takeaway
all
from
the
that is,
ideas.
yeah, you're looking for like-minded people. So it could be a neighbour.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just really curious to find out if anybody that's joined us tonight, are they doing anything? Are they thinking about doing something? Is that why they joined? Have they got any questions? Are they looking for some sort of support? Or, and it's okay if you don't want to ask, you can put it in the chat. We've got a very quiet lot tonight. I guess I've got another question while people are having a think. And it was, it's really difficult to sometimes some of the community groups that we've worked with, they might have enthusiastic people to start with, and then people have lots of commitments, and it's great that you're able to spend lots of time, and not everybody has that sort of luxury to be able to do that. They might be working full time, and so it's just kind of juggling family life and all those sorts of things. So you get some people who they join and then they're not able to stay. So you kind of have a fluctuation of people joining and stopping. So how do you keep the motivation with the volunteers? How do you keep them, supporting you?
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. I mean, when we started it in 2020, I was still working full time, and that made me think you've got to get the right balance. And what I try to emphasize all the way through this when I've been talking to people is only do what you can. Anything you do makes a difference. So even if it's only 2 minutes a week, that's brilliant. And so we've definitely not put pressure on people, Danielle, to make commitments to when they can come, what they'll do, and that's really important. And in terms of keeping people engaged, we've got things like WhatsApp group set up, and so we've got the Facebook group and the newsletter where every month I'll let people know what we're doing. WhatsApp, we're all sending each other pictures of wildflowers and bits of work we're doing. Quite in the moment, something a bit of not what's good natured, sort of, this is what I saw today, what do you think? Anybody else seen it? So you just keep the conversation going. And that's been really important as well. And I've learned that in my working career, is that you've got to keep people up to date, informed as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. So, and last week, for example, we had a team meeting where we just got down, we met in the village hall over a couple of glasses of wine, and just talked about the year. And again, I said, come along if you can. If you can't, don't worry about it. And so it's so important when you've got volunteers that you've got to adapt to their availability and their interests as well, because if you can empathize and understand what's motivating them, you can try and steer them in the right direction. So, for example, I've got some members of the group that have got young families and they really want to get their kids involved. So I try and do things for them that involve in getting their children to do work. So tap into what I think interests them as well, rather than just saying, well, you've got to do this. That seems to work quite well.
So it's listening and staying connected.
You've got to listen and stay connected, and not and work within their own constraints, really, as to when they've got time and when they're available. Yeah.
Thank you. So I just can see that Anna's just put in that she would like to add bats and hedgehogs to the equation. So you live in Bolsover district. It's really interesting because in January there's going to be a biodiversity summit. I've forgotten what it's called. Jordan, if you're there, and that's going to be happening in January, and lots of people, everybody's invited to come along to that. So if you want to share, if I share our email and you email us, Anna, and I can tell you when that is to make sure that you get an invite. And if you want any support on putting up bat boxes and trying to get a hedgehog street going in your community, then we've got all the resources we can share with you. So yeah, I'll pop the email in a second so that you can email us. I'm going to hand over to Jordan because I think Jordan's got a couple more slides, and I think she can also tell you about some, I think we've given away some freebies tonight. So for saying thank you for coming along and being a wildlife champion. So Jordan, I'll hand over, and I'm sure Philip's going to be around. So if you have got any questions, then you can ask him. And I did notice you've got your email as well, Philip. So if you wanted to share that in the chat, then people could email you.
Yeah, and I'll share these recording and the slides with everybody afterwards as well, because you got the emails for Eventbrite, so I'll send that to you. Super. Yeah, so that was really great. Thank you again, Philip. Really excited to hear about what you did and kind of the small stages that you took to do that, to get to where you have today. So I'm just going to share some slides again about the resources we have at Derbyshire Wildlife Trust that could help you. There we go. Let me make this bigger. So yeah, as part of Team Wilders, we talked about it's about us supporting you and helping to facilitate you, but not necessarily doing things for you. So we've created lots of different resources and training so that you could be the people going out there in your community and doing it. We've got toolkits available on our website. These are constantly kind of being developed and added to. So there's lots of different things depending what people tell us they want. So we have the 15 ways to reduce flooding, and that talks about things you can do in your home and in your community. From the smallest things like having a small pond in your garden to creating maybe a green roof. We've also got a Wilder Communities Toolkit, and this is a really good introduction if you're thinking about getting started with your group, you're not sure where to start. Hopefully you can take some of Philip's inspiration, and if you have a read through this, it's kind of got about 15 different ideas and the 5 simple steps to get those little things started, and you can build on that. We've got a Wild at Home planner, but again, you can use that at home with your street, with everybody. And it's just about different things you can do at different times of year, what you could plant. It's got some fun bits in there as well. So it's not just about the wildlife, it's about things you could do as well. We've got some videos if you prefer video. So we've got some videos and guides on how to plant a tree, how to build a bird box, and how to create a pond in a pot. All of the actions we've talked about as well, we have different pages on there and how you can do those. And we do have a Wildflower Meadows toolkit. So if you were inspired from Philip's talk, that talks about things from just doing grow dirt mow in your garden, all the way up to creating a full wildflower meadow. And that's a bit more in detail, that one. We've done some webinars as well previously that were recorded, so you can catch up on those. So if you're thinking about how to set up a group or how to fund a group, we had someone from Community Action Derby, and that's their specialism. So they talked all about the kind of like the different ways you can set up a group, what you need, how you can set up a bank account, all those different types of things so you could get funding. So they're really worth a watch as well. And they're on our website, and we will send all these links out in an email afterwards as well, so you can find those. So yeah, also some training that's going on that might happen. So this week there was some tree planting training going on as part of the Derwent Connection project, so people can get involved with that. 2 weeks ago we had Hope for the Future, talking about how people can use their voice to talk to their MPs and make change in their community as well. We also have a Facebook group that's Team Wilder Derbyshire, and that's a fantastic place for you to get support from other people, ask questions about to groups and what they're doing. And we share on there lots of things we know about happening. So if we find out about funding opportunities for communities, we share that in there. We might share training we've heard about from third parties, if there's free tree schemes in your area, lots of different things on there. So I think we've got about 125 members in there at the moment, so definitely worth joining if you want some help and support. And please feel free to share what you're doing in there as well. Pictures inspire other people, no matter where you are on your journey. That'd be really nice. And then mapping meaningful actions in your community group. So it's really kind of helpful for us to track what people are doing, so we know which areas are maybe a bit wilder, where we might need to do some more work. And if you want to get volunteers or more people engaged in your community group and project. So we've got 2 different maps, one where you can map your action and what you've done. So we would love it if you get your free bulbs from today, if you could plot on that map. It's on our website, so we will send you the link, and you literally just pop in your postcode and what you've done, and it'll drop a pin on the map so we know where all the bulbs have been planted. And then we have another map, which is the community group map, which I'll send you as well. And you can, if you do start a project, if you have a group on there, you can put that on there. You can put your contact details on. You can put a little summary if you're looking for volunteers, if you want people to get in touch with you, if you just want to share ideas, and you can find other groups on there. So if you're looking for another community orchard or something like that, people will start populating that. And that was everything from me, really. So you will get your bulbs, your freebies for coming. If you can come and collect them from our office in Middleton, that would be fantastic. We can arrange a time to do that. And if you can't for any reason get to the office, we can post those out to you. But it would be great to meet some of you in person if you are planning to do some things and have a bit more of an in-detailed chat. And then your projects, Danielle kind of mentioned it before, and I know Anna chatted, but if anybody else wanted to share anything in terms of projects, or maybe what support they think they'd need, what training they'd like to see from us, we can't promise we can do it, but we'll certainly kind of see if there's a demand for it and what we can do to help you.
Yes, we can definitely send you the Hedgehog Highway links. So we can send that out to everybody when you send the links, Jordan. Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem. I'll send that.
Is there any other questions before we wrap up tonight? Right, well, we will thank Philip. Philip, you were amazing as always. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And yeah, just it'd be great if we can all stay connected. And I wish you all the best on your wildlife action journeys. Thank you, Jordan, for your presentations tonight as well. And if you think of anything after this, then you've got Philip's email, you've got my email. And then after this, Jordan's going to send around the recording of this along with some links of the toolkits and things that we've talked about tonight, so that you don't miss out.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. See you guys. Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.